Hello, friends, and welcome to the Prepwell Podcast. I'm your host, Phil Black. And if you have an 8th, 9th, or 10th grader with big aspirations, like the Ivy League, or military service academies like West Point, ROTC, or athletic scholarships, boom, you've come to the right place. My specialty, my superpower, if you will, is preparing families for these competitive programs. I'll teach you what your child should do, when they should do it, and how you can help. So stick around and prepare to out-prepare. Hello, friends, and welcome to the Prepwell Podcast. Last week, I focused primarily on the challenges and opportunities that juniors are facing, given what's going on out there. And for context, just in case you're listening to this down the road, we are in mid-April, roughly 4 weeks into shelter-in-place orders caused by the COVID-19 outbreak. So that's the backdrop. This week, I'd like to shift focus to discuss the impact of COVID-19 on freshmen and sophomores, and of course their parents. After all, freshmen and sophomores are the lifeblood of Prepwell Academy, and we focus on them quite a bit. And by preparing them well for their future, they will hopefully avoid a lot of the headaches that their unprepared peers are facing right now, especially juniors. But before I jump in, if you haven't heard, this just in, the June 6th SAT has been canceled. This was not a big surprise. The next available test will be August 29th. And then, from what we're told, every month through December. So as I said before, there should be ample opportunity for you to take an SAT or an SAT subject test even before the early action deadlines, even if it means taking an at-home SAT, which apparently is a possibility if schools are not yet in session by September. It's not great news if you don't already have your SAT score, which I hope you do, but it's progress. If you registered for an SAT that was canceled, you should have priority registration for the next available test. If you have not yet taken an SAT, you should have priority as well. Now, given this new guidance, I will likely do a podcast breaking down specific strategies for rising juniors and seniors in the next week or so stay tuned. In some ways, you can breathe a sigh of relief that you have a little extra study time on your hands. Okay, now let's get back to our regularly scheduled programming. First, I'd like to address some high-level strategic considerations. That is, what are the trends that we're seeing? How are colleges responding to this crisis? Is it making things easier or harder, and for whom? What are we seeing months and years down the line? Then I'd like to switch gears and talk more about tactical considerations, actionable tips that you can use and execute right now. It's less theory and speculation and more on-the-ground tasks that you can put into practice, like right now. So let's start with the strategic considerations. Again, this is the 30,000-foot perspective, the macro-level thoughts about trends and market shifts. Here's the big one. Competition will likely get even tougher for in-state schools. Let me repeat that. Competition for admission will likely get even tougher for in-state schools. I happen to live in California, and competition to get into some of our state schools, we have what's called UC schools, University of California schools, is normally quite competitive. And from what I'm seeing now, I see this competition getting even tougher. And here are a few reasons. Number one, personal wealth for most Americans has taken a huge hit. Whether it's 401k or college savings plans like 529s, the stock market has taken a beating. Now it may come back, it may not, it may take a long time to come back. So if you're forced to withdraw money now to pay for college while the market's down, that can create massive financial challenges. Not to mention what happens to the folks who've lost jobs or businesses or both. So what does this mean? Well, it means there could be a dramatic shift toward in-state colleges and universities, which are normally subsidized for in-state residents. They also require less travel, which is more affordable. It also gives students options to live at home so they can save on room and board. So the economic downdraft may drive more students toward their in-state school options. Number two, private college endowments will be down because of this economic downturn. And most predict that, in general, schools are going to be less generous with financial aid and grants and scholarships, which, once again, may cause families to shift to state schools, which are typically more affordable. Number three, there are colleges that are shutting down, going bankrupt. They've been operating on the edge of solvency, and this has pushed them over the edge, where they are unrecoverable. This may also cause a shift toward brand-named, well-established flagship schools that are perceived to be more stable and enduring, like state schools, which have the support of the state government. Number four, college athletic scholarship budgets may be impacted, particularly for non-headcount sports. And if sports scholarships are now off the table for some student athletes who are pinning their hopes and dreams on some kind of athletic scholarship, many of those students will revert to state schools. And because of their commitment to their sports through the years, they often don't have the grades or the extracurriculars to be competitive at the more select private schools. So they're forced to default to the state school. Number five, many students are choosing, or their parents are insisting, that they stay closer to home in case this pandemic continues or in case it flares up again. They want their children to be just a drive away and not across the country. Again, this might lead to more students applying to state schools. Number six, sometimes when there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a flight to the familiar, to the comfortable, to what people know and have grown up around. Number seven, in some cases, state schools are lowering or changing their admissions requirements. For instance, UC schools, as I referred to earlier, like Cal Berkeley and UCLA and UCSD. This year, at least, they no longer require the SAT or ACT score, and they no longer have minimum GPAs as far as I know. This will likely drive more applications from students who otherwise would not have applied because they weren't necessarily competitive when you look at their GPA and their SAT score. That's out the window now, and the floodgates are open. And it's possible that more people are applying because what do they have to lose? If they don't have to show an SAT score or an ACT score, they may look much like everyone else, and hence, maybe they'll get in. What all of these factors mean is that there may be an unprecedented wave of students clamoring for admission to their local in-state colleges. And with more applications comes more competition. The selectivity will increase, which means that theoretically, applicants will need to be more qualified than ever before to be admitted. Now, one potential countervailing force to this would be if junior colleges started siphoning off applicants from the state schools. What do I mean by that? Well, family finances may be so impacted that even subsidized state schools may be too expensive, and there may be a flight to value to the junior colleges and two-year programs in order to salvage any kind of college experience. If this is true, this may provide a pressure relief valve that draws some students away from applying to their state schools at all. We just don't know. Now I'd like to switch gears from the potential swelling of applications to state schools and what that might mean for competition to the changing landscape of higher education and the labor force in general. What will careers look like in what might become a new world order, in this post-corona world? What are the kinds of jobs, the opportunities, and what will become of jobs that require close contact with other human beings? Will they fall out of favor? Will students start to lean toward careers that will be viable should something like the coronavirus happen again? Will they look for careers that are less impacted by future epidemics? Will they gravitate toward careers where distance learning and interaction is the norm? Will Google and Salesforce and Uber employees ever go back to their big offices again? We don't know. Will remote working become the new normal? And the longer this quarantine goes on, the more efficient distant learning and remote working will become, and the less necessary traditional work environments may become. It's possible. And if that's the case, which careers and which college majors will be the winners? And which ones will start to die quick deaths? Will students search for careers where they're considered essential workers when a pandemic hits? Should that become a new job search criteria? Is my job or career or industry pandemic proof? And what are those careers? What will job prospects be like in 6 or 7 years? There will likely be industries and careers that no one has even conceived of yet. And finally, what type of debt are students and families willing to incur with this type of uncertainty on the horizon? What if we slip into a 5 to 10 year depression? What impact will student debt have on their future prospects? Now let's shift to tactical considerations. What can I do right now? Well, I hope in some ways that this situation serves as a wake-up call. What we're living through has never happened before, at least to this extent. This makes the Varsity Blues fiasco look like child's play. It's not even on the radar anymore. And while we will all survive, so to speak, we have no idea what this crisis will leave in its wake. Parents, if finances are becoming an issue, and you weren't planning on a 30% drop in the stock market, and or maybe your job prospects have dimmed, or your business is flagging, or your business is bankrupt, here's a tactical tip. Start giving more serious consideration to the following. Number 1, junior colleges and 2-year programs. Number 2, state schools. Number 3, private schools that are well endowed. Number 4, private schools that continue to give generous need-based aid. I would also give a serious look to military service academies like West Point and the Naval Academy and the Air Force Academy, which provide world-class educations for free. I'd also look into ROTC scholarships, which allow your son or daughter to attend a traditional college tuition-free or better. These opportunities are valued at between $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 and include a guaranteed job for 5 years upon graduation. Maybe this epidemic will open your eyes to these possibilities. And lastly, I would pay even closer attention to any notion that you might have that your son or daughter will earn an athletic scholarship. For one, athletic scholarships are very rare. I know they get outsized attention in the media, but the reality is that your child will likely not earn a full ride scholarship anywhere. That's not an indictment of you or how good your child is in basketball or tennis. It's just numbers. The odds are not with you. It's the same reason you wouldn't bank on that penny stock going public by next quarter. It's just unlikely. The mythical full ride athletic scholarship is rare and only available in a small number of sports. For men, it's basketball and football. And for women, it's basketball, volleyball, tennis, and gymnastics. These are what we call the head count sports. Please check out episode 7 of the podcast for more details about this. I talk about this at length. Other popular sports like crew and golf and soccer and water polo and lacrosse and swimming, they're considered what we call equivalency sports. So instead of giving each player a full scholarship, students are given a portion, maybe, of a pot of money that a coach is given in any given year. And there are a lot of people who believe that the budgets for these equivalency sports may be shrinking or some may disappear completely. So the bottom line here is to be even more careful about pinning your hopes and dreams on an athletic scholarship if you think it's going to have a financial ROI and if you don't know what you're doing. It's a recipe for disappointment. And the dirty little secret is, if you don't realize this early enough, and your child continues to focus exclusively on their sport, and they ignore other parts of their life, like grades and SAT and summer experiences and leadership, and they don't get that financial payoff, if you will, that you were counting on, they get a triple whammy because they don't get the money, they don't play their sport, and they don't have a competitive enough profile to compete against other students, even at state schools. This is what I lose sleep over, because I see students all the time who wait too long to realize that they're not good enough, or that there's no money there, or both, and it's too late to go back in time to become a competitive candidate. So my advice is start to manage your child's expectations so that they don't get fixated on a college athletic scholarship, or they don't get fixated on the big, expensive, fancy brand name schools, whether they are state schools or private schools. This path just may not be viable anymore. What's happening right now is a wake-up call for students to become more competitive, even if it's only to get into a state school. And I won't apologize for urging kids to step up their game. Many of them need to. I hear from parents every single day about how unmotivated or unengaged their kids are. That may have worked out in years past. It won't work now. I'm sorry. I know the news media out there go out of their way to talk about how stressed out kids are and how not to push them too hard. They're so fragile. Well, if you're that fragile, you'll probably want someone else to mentor your child, because encouraging kids to prepare for the unexpected should not equate to pressure or stress. If you're starting early enough, like prep-wellers do, there should be neither. For many years, students have been asleep at the switch and not paying attention until it's too late. They've been getting away with it. The strategy will not work anymore. And the way to be more competitive is to have a plan and to follow it. The slumber is over. Students can't afford to goof around thinking that everything will be fine. I'll just roll into a state school. It's not happening anymore. That's not going to be realistic. You need a plan. And of course, where do you find that plan, that guidance, that mentorship, and early enough? You find it every week inside Prepwell Academy. If you're a 9th or a 10th grader and not enrolled yet, what exactly are you waiting for? Do you have the whole thing under control? You have it all road mapped out? If so, number one, I commend you and congratulate you. And number two, please email me and I'll give you an internship at Prepwell Academy, because you'd be in the top 0.5% of all teenagers. If you're an 8th grader, I hope your parents are gearing up for June 1st when registration opens up for you as a rising freshman. What should freshmen and sophomores be doing right now? Well, I can't compress 100 weeks worth of suggestions into a minute, but here are the highlights. Number one, change your mindset from passive to proactive. Start paying attention. Number two, look for leadership opportunities, even if that means standing up a school club in an online environment. Number three, become very familiar with test taking and know which tests to take and when to take them. Number four, don't be scared, be prepared. For sophomores, or soon-to-be rising juniors, SAT and AC study should happen this summer. And I have many podcasts and blogs dedicated to the details of this plan. Summer opportunities. I know the summer is still in flux to some degree. Some of you have plans that have been canceled. Some you're still holding on. So plan for normal operations and then plan for a continued quarantine. And I've done podcasts and blogs on this as well. I strongly suggest that you engage even more rigorously with your weekly Prepwell lessons. And if you're not yet enrolled, I would get on the stick and enroll. If you're a Prepweller, please email me or text me with questions. I'm happy to help you out. I know this is a tense time and you're looking for answers. We had a very successful office hours session yesterday for 2 hours where I answered a bunch of questions from Prepwellers and their parents across the country. It was so successful, I plan to open up more office hours soon for our Prepwell parents and students. So start gathering those questions and I'm happy to answer those. That's all I've got for you today, folks. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for the continued support. If you know a parent with an 8th grader, 9th grader, 10th grader in high school that might find this helpful, please share the episode with them. You can do that by finding that small box with a tiny arrow pointing up. That's the share button. Click that button and text your friends the link to this episode with a little personal note from you recommending that they take a listen. If you have questions, comments, or an idea for an upcoming episode, please reach out to me by email. DM me on Instagram, Prepwell_Academy. Check out my blog, my Facebook page. Visit me on LinkedIn. I would love to hear from you. Until next week, goodbye, good luck, and never stop preparing. This podcast is brought to you by Prepwell Academy. Prepwell Academy is my one-of-a-kind online mentoring program that delivers to your 9th or 10th grader a short, highly relevant video from me every week, every Sunday in fact, where I give them a heads up about what they should be thinking about to stay ahead of the game. To get these valuable lessons into your child's hands, please head over to prepwellacademy.com and enroll your child today.